Keanu Reeves never thought a simple trip to a courtroom would become one of the most unforgettable moments of his life. He went to help a friend, Rosa Garcia, but ended up facing a huge challenge that showed the world his strength, kindness, and unshakable belief in doing what's right. This is the story of how Keanu used simple words and a big heart to stand up for truth and change how people think about fairness and respect. It was a bright Tuesday morning in Los Angeles, and Keanu, a famous actor known for movies like The Matrix, John Wick, and Speed, walked into the waiting room of the Judge Judy TV show. He wasn't there to promote a new film or make a big appearance. Instead, he was there as a witness in a small court case that had pulled him into its drama. The case was about Rosa Garcia, a 73-year-old housekeeper who had worked for Keanu for 3 years. Rosa was being sued by a wealthy man named Richard Blackstone, who claimed she stole a $12,000 diamond bracelet. Rosa said the bracelet was a gift from her previous boss, Mrs. Chun, and Keanu was the only person who could prove her story because he was there when Mrs. Chun gave it to her. Keanu wanted to stay out of the spotlight. He wore plain clothes, blue jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and a worn leather jacket that looked like it had seen many years. He sat quietly in a corner of the waiting room, holding a book called Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. Reading was Keanu's way of staying calm, even when things around him felt stressful. The book's words about life, love, and finding meaning helped him feel grounded. But even in his simple outfit, people noticed him. Other people waiting for their cases whispered to each other, "Is that really Keanu Reeves?" A young woman leaned toward her friend and said, "What's a movie star doing here?" Another person nearby took a sneaky photo with their phone, thinking Keanu wouldn't notice. But Keanu heard the whispers and saw the glances. He just kept his eyes on his book, pretending not to care. He wasn't there for attention. He was there to help Rosa. Rosa sat across from him, looking worried. Her hands shook a little as she clutched a manila folder filled with papers that supported her side of the story. Rosa was a kind woman who had spent her whole life cleaning houses for other people. She worked hard, sending money to her family in El Salvador, and never asked for much in return, just respect and fair pay. Her face showed the years of hard work, with wrinkles that told stories of long days and quiet strength. "Mr. Keanu," she said in her soft, accented voice, "I'm so sorry you have to be here. I know you're a busy man with important things to do." Keanu closed his book gently and looked at her with a warm, reassuring smile. "Rosa, don't worry about that. There's nowhere else I'd rather be right now. You're an honest, kind person, and I'm here to help you prove it." His words were simple but full of care, and they made Rosa's eyes soften with gratitude. Some people nearby overheard the conversation, and their faces changed. They saw a Hollywood star treating a housekeeper like she was just as important as anyone else. It wasn't for cameras or fame. It was because Keanu believed it was the right thing to do. Not everyone in the room was so kind. Richard Blackstone, the man suing Rosa, didn't care about Keanu's kindness or Rosa's honesty. He was a rich real estate developer in his 60s, with silver hair and an expensive suit that screamed wealth. He carried himself like someone who always got his way. From the moment he arrived, he shot mean looks at Rosa and Keanu. "I don't care if he's John Wick or Batman," Blackstone said loudly to his lawyer, making sure everyone could hear. "The help stole from me, and I want justice." Calling Rosa the help was a cruel way to talk about her, like she was less than a person. Keanu's jaw tightened when he heard it, and his hand gripped his book a little harder. He didn't like how Blackstone treated Rosa, but he stayed quiet. Keanu had learned long ago that some battles are better fought with silence than with angry words. Earlier that morning, a producer named Janet had talked to Keanu about how the Judge Judy show worked. She was a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard, and she spoke quickly, like she was used to giving orders. "Just answer the questions straight," she told Keanu. "Judge Judy likes clear answers, no fancy Hollywood stories." But there was something in her tone that made Keanu feel uneasy. The way she looked at him, like he was an interesting toy or an animal in a zoo, set off a warning in his mind. She seemed excited to have a famous person in the courtroom, but not in a good way. Keanu got the feeling this wasn't going to be as simple as telling the truth. Still, he nodded politely and said, "I understand." He was ready to do what he came for, help Rosa. Before the case began, Keanu took a moment to talk to Rosa privately. They stepped into a quiet corner of the waiting room, away from the curious eyes. "Rosa," he said softly, "I know this is scary, but you've done nothing wrong. I saw Mrs. Chin give you that bracelet, and I'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Rosa's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "You're a good man, Mr. Keanu," she said. "My husband Eduardo was like you. He always stood up for what was right, even when it was hard." Keanu felt a lump in his throat. Rosa's words touched him deeply, reminding him of why he was there. He wasn't just helping a friend. He was standing up for someone who deserved justice. When a production assistant called out, "Garcia versus Blackstone, you're up," Keanu felt a mix of excitement and nervousness in his chest. It was the same feeling he got before filming a tough scene in a movie, like when he had to jump off a building or fight a dozen bad guys. He'd faced assassins and saved the world on screen, but walking into Judge Judy's courtroom felt scarier than any action scene. As they walked through the doors, Keanu noticed Rosa's hands shaking even more. He gave her a small, encouraging nod like he was saying, "We're in this together." Rosa took a deep breath and followed him, clutching her folder tightly. Inside the courtroom, Judge Judy Shineland sat at her high bench, looking serious as she flipped through papers. She was smaller than she seemed on TV, but her presence filled the room like a storm cloud ready to burst. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Keanu, he felt a chill. For a moment their eyes met, and he saw a spark in her gaze. Something like excitement, but not the friendly kind. It was like she was sizing him up, planning something. Keanu's gut told him this wasn't going to be a fair hearing, but he stood tall, ready to tell the truth and help Rosa. Judge Judy didn't waste any time showing who was in charge. She looked up from her papers and said, "So, we have a housekeeper saying jewelry was a gift, and now Hollywood royalty is here to speak for the help." Her voice was sharp, like a knife cutting through the air. Calling Rosa the help made Rosa shrink in her seat, her shoulders sagging. Keanu felt a pang in his chest, but he stayed calm. He stepped forward and said, "Your Honor, I was there when Mrs. Chen gave Rosa the bracelet. It was a gift for her 20 years of hard work." His voice was steady, but Judge Judy laughed, a cold, mean laugh that had no warmth. "Oh, you were there," she said. "In your world, do housekeepers get $12,000 bracelets as gifts?" She was trying to make Keanu sound like he was out of touch with regular people, like his fame made him clueless. Keanu answered carefully, choosing his words like he was walking through a minefield. "Mrs. Chen was a generous woman who valued Rosa's 20 years of loyal work," he said. But Judge Judy cut him off, her voice mocking. "Your experience?" she repeated. "Do you clean your own house, Mr. Reeves? Do you know what normal people give their housekeepers when they retire? A card, maybe a small bonus, not jewelry worth more than most people make in a year." Keanu felt like he was being attacked, but this wasn't a movie where he could fight back with punches or clever lines. This was Judge Judy's courtroom, and she was using his fame against him, trying to make him look foolish. Then things took a darker turn. Judge Judy changed the subject completely. "Are you a spiritual person, Mr. Reeves?" she asked, her tone sharp and tricky. Keanu sensed a trap, but he wasn't sure what it was. "Yes, I have spiritual beliefs," he said slowly, keeping his voice calm. Judge Judy smirked, like she'd caught him in something. "Oh, spiritual beliefs," she said, as if the words tasted bad. "Like the stuff you've talked about in interviews. Life after death, reincarnation, all that mystical nonsense?" The courtroom went quiet. Even Richard Blackstone looked surprised. This wasn't about the bracelet anymore. It was about attacking Keanu's personal beliefs. Keanu tried to stay focused on the case. "I don't see how my beliefs matter here," he said firmly. But Judge Judy kept going, her voice full of scorn. "They matter because they show if you're a reliable witness. If you believe in fairy tales, how can we trust what you saw?" Rosa looked horrified, her eyes filling with tears. She hadn't wanted this. She just needed Keanu to tell the truth about the bracelet, and now he was being attacked for helping her. Keanu's heart hurt for her, but he kept his face calm, not letting Judge Judy see how her words stung. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, looking pleased with herself, like she'd found a way to win. "Let's get specific," she said, glancing at notes that had nothing to do with the bracelet. "Haven't you said you feel your daughter, who passed away, still talks to you from beyond?" The question hit the room like a thunderbolt. Several people gasped. Rosa covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Even Blackstone shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable. Keanu's daughter, Ava, had been born still, and losing her was the deepest pain he'd ever felt. Judge Judy was using that pain to make him look bad, turning his grief into a weapon for TV entertainment. Keanu stood perfectly still, but inside, he was gathering his strength. His shoulders squared, and his breathing slowed, like he was preparing for a battle, not with fists but with words and truth. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "my grief doesn't have anything to do with this case." Judge Judy laughed again, a cruel sound that echoed in the room. "Grief? Is that what you call believing in messages from the dead? That's not grief, Mr. Reeves, that's fantasy." Her words were like knives, cutting into Keanu's heart. She wasn't just questioning his story about the bracelet. She was attacking the most sacred, painful part of his life. She didn't stop there. "You've talked about Buddhism, reincarnation, meditation retreats, and spiritual teachers," Judge Judy said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Do you think a rational person believes in that stuff?" The audience was uneasy now. This wasn't a fair trial anymore. It was a mean show for TV viewers. People shifted in their seats, feeling that Judge Judy had gone too far. But she was in charge, and no one dared to speak up. Judge Judy kept pushing. "And your charity work, giving millions to cancer research, children's hospitals, and struggling families. Some people might call that generous, but I call it guilt. You're trying to buy your way into heaven or good karma, or whatever magical reward you believe in, right?" She was tearing down everything that made Keanu who he was, his kindness, his faith, his pain. Rosa was crying softly now, feeling terrible that her simple case had turned into this attack on Keanu. "Please," she whispered, "this isn't right." But Judge Judy was too caught up in her attack to listen. She thought she was winning, but she didn't know she was about to awaken something powerful in Keanu. Keanu stood there, absorbing her words, but he wasn't breaking. Inside, something was happening. Years of meditation, reading philosophy, and dealing with loss had taught him how to stay strong in tough moments. He thought about his daughter, Ava, and the moment he held her tiny body, feeling her spirit even though she couldn't stay. He remembered his friend River Phoenix, who died young, and how Keanu felt something bigger than life leave the room that day. He thought about Rosa, who had told him stories about her late husband, Eduardo, a man who worked construction for 40 years and never missed Sunday Mass. Rosa said Keanu's kindness reminded her of Eduardo, who believed God watched over good people, even when the world was unfair. Keanu also remembered the kids he'd met in hospitals during his charity visits. One little girl, Sarah, had told him about seeing her grandmother in a dream, describing her old house perfectly, even though she'd never been there. Another boy, Michael, talked about a bright light he saw when he was very sick, saying it made him feel safe. Those moments stuck with Keanu, reminding him that there's more to life than what we can see or touch. These memories gave him strength as Judge Judy's words tried to tear him down. Judge Judy snapped. "Are you even listening to me?" She noticed Keanu's face had changed. The tension was gone, replaced by a deep, steady calm, like a lake with no ripples. "I'm listening," Keanu said softly. "I'm hearing everything you're saying." Judge Judy pushed harder. "This court is about facts, not feelings or spiritual nonsense." Keanu gently interrupted, his voice calm but strong. "Your Honor, can I ask you something?" The room went completely still. Judge Judy blinked, caught off guard. "What?" she said, her voice sharp. "Have you ever lost someone you loved?" Keanu asked. His question was simple but powerful, and it changed the air in the room. "Have you ever held them as they passed away? Felt the moment their spirit left their body?" Judge Judy opened her mouth, but no words came out. She wasn't used to being challenged like this. Keanu kept going, his voice steady but full of strength. "I have. I held my daughter, Ava, when she was born, and I felt her presence, even though she didn't live. I held my friend River when he was dying, and I felt something more than just a body leave the room. I've sat with kids in cancer wards who talk about seeing their grandparents who passed away or describe places they've never been. Are they wrong? Are they delusional?" Judge Judy tried to take control. "This isn't the place for that, Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice shaky. But Keanu wasn't done. "You want to talk about reality?" he said, his voice growing stronger. "Reality is that love connects us in ways we don't fully understand. Reality is that dismissing someone's experiences doesn't make you smart. It makes you closed off." He took a step closer to the bench, not in an angry way, but with the confidence of someone who knew he was standing on solid ground. "You've spent this whole time attacking my beliefs, my grief, and my character. You've used my daughter's death for entertainment. But you haven't talked about the truth of this case." The courtroom was silent. Even the camera operators stopped moving, caught up in the moment. Keanu pulled out his phone and held it up. "I have proof," he said calmly. "Photos from Mrs. Chen's retirement party, where she gave Rosa the bracelet in front of 12 witnesses. A video of her speech, where she said the bracelet was a gift for Rosa's 20 years of hard work. And a letter from Mrs. Chun, notarized in her will, saying she wanted Rosa to have it because of her kind heart. Judge Judy's face changed. She looked shocked, her confidence fading. "You have what?" she stammered. "I tried to give this to your team 3 weeks ago," Keanu said. "They said it wasn't needed because this was a credibility case. But instead of looking at the evidence, you attacked me and ignored Rosa's truth." Richard Blackstone's face went pale. He knew his case was falling apart. Judge Judy tried to speak, but Keanu kept going. "This case isn't about a bracelet. It's about power. It's about a rich man bullying a kind woman because he thinks he can. It's about a show ignoring proof to make drama for TV." Rosa found her courage and stood up. "Judge Judy," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I cleaned houses for 50 years. I raised 4 kids. I sent money to my family in El Salvador. I never stole anything. This man called me a thief because I'm poor and an immigrant. But Mr. Keanu knows I'm honest. Mrs. Chun knew I'm honest." Her words were strong, and Keanu nodded at her, proud of her bravery. Keanu turned to the cameras, his voice steady and powerful. "This is about how we treat each other. Rosa deserves respect, not just a dismissed case. She deserves an apology for being called a thief when there was proof she was innocent." He looked at Judge Judy, who was struggling to keep her usual control. "You used your power to mock my beliefs and my pain. You made this a show, not justice. But people watching will see the truth. They'll see you chose cruelty over fairness." Judge Judy was quiet, her usual confidence gone. She finally said, "Case dismissed." But Keanu wasn't finished. "Dismissing the case doesn't fix what happened," he said. "You hurt Rosa. You used my grief for TV. You need to make this right." He helped Rosa stand, treating her with the same care he'd show a close friend or family member. "Rosa," he said, looking into her eyes, "you're not just innocent. You're strong and good. You've worked hard your whole life, loved deeply, and kept your dignity, even when people tried to take it away." To the cameras, Keanu said, "Your beliefs matter. Your pain matters. Your love matters. Don't let anyone tell you they're foolish. I've lost people I love, and I've felt them with me. I've sat with dying kids who see things we can't explain. Love is stronger than death. Kindness is stronger than cruelty. Treating people with respect is the most important thing we can do." His words were simple but powerful, like a light shining in a dark room. The episode aired exactly as it happened, with no edits to hide Judge Judy's harsh words or Keanu's calm strength. Millions of people watched and shared it online. They saw a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. They saw someone defend a kind woman who had been unfairly treated. They saw Keanu stand up for everyone who's ever felt small for believing in something bigger than themselves, whether it's love, faith, or hope. After the show, Rosa and Keanu walked out of the courtroom together. Rosa held Keanu's arm, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Keanu," she said. "You didn't just help me. You showed the world what kindness looks like." Keanu smiled and said, "Rosa, you're the strong one. You've been kind your whole life, and that's what matters." The story didn't end in the courtroom. People all over the world talked about what happened. They shared clips of Keanu's words, especially when he said, "Kindness is the strongest thing we can do." Schools showed the video in classes to teach kids about standing up for what's right. Churches and community groups used it to talk about treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are. Rosa's story became a symbol of hope for people who felt ignored or unfairly treated. Keanu went back to his quiet life, but he knew the world had seen something special. He didn't do it for fame or praise. He did it because it was right. And in that courtroom, he showed that a quiet voice, filled with truth and kindness, can be louder than any shout. Keanu Reeves proved that standing up for someone else, even when it's hard, can change hearts and minds everywhere. Months later, Rosa invited Keanu to a small family gathering at her home. It was a simple house, filled with love and laughter. Her children and grandchildren were there, and they thanked Keanu for what he did. They shared stories of Rosa's hard work, her sacrifices, and her unbreakable spirit. Keanu listened, smiling, feeling honored to be part of their family for a day. Rosa gave him a small handmade bracelet, not expensive, but made with love. "It's not like Mrs. Chen's bracelet," she said, "but it's from my heart." Keanu wore it proudly, a reminder that kindness and truth always matter.